So now we're going to discuss and see how we can put this model to work. And we're going to start talking about the beginnings, right? The developmental stage, the infancy. And for a partnership perspective, this is it's the part where you develop trust, right, and security. I was reading through this today, and I'm thinking attachment. This is where you get attached. This is where you feel like this is a safe space, and I'm safe here. And we have like different activities in how we define that. But for us, it meant reconnecting ourselves. We have a plus, right? So we met, we did residency together, so we knew each other, but we kind of like went into our own development, separated. Michelle was in California doing a fellowship, and I was just on the fourth years of putting a Kiparati on the ground and noticing both of us, we were coming together, Michelle from California and myself from my practice, and like, my gosh, these parents need help. What can we do? So we were both thinking about identifying the same need for the community. And we were still working independently, right? So Michelle was getting this career developmental award. We were considering making a video for padres, a video called Entre Padres from a different project going on in the community. And we just met and thought, hey, we need to work together. And at the beginning, it was very, very rough to kind of like secure the same trust and safety that I have to my team, to go back to my team saying, like, this is great. This is a great partnership with the university because of all the distrust and because this research idea or doing research was sort of like daunting to them because of past experiences about university working with the community. And it was only till they realized like the research idea was so much grounded into an unmet need and the processes were going to be different that we were able to have them switch and come along and support the project. So I'm going to read, for example, one, I think this is a quote that summarizes everything, right? At the beginning, I was totally suspicious about you and Michelle's intention because of the long tradition of the academic world to evaluate communities and run away without building something meaningful for that community. But I started to see you all meetings on Friday here at the clinic, and later on I heard Viviana saying great things about the Parents Advisory Board and how involved, how engaged, and how insightful those parents were during the meeting. So little by little, they became curious about the process. And by the time the pilot session started, I was just totally convinced that a real collaboration between academic and community world was happening.
And I would say that a couple of the things that were pointed out there that are probably important is that we were meeting at Equiparati. We were meeting regularly. It was an open meeting. People were invited in as they felt comfortable, and I think that those things made a lot of difference in developing trust.
Totally.
So the next stage is the toddler stage, and that's really about kind of taking that trust and then moving it into a partnership. So bringing all of the individuals together with their organizational autonomy and goals and finding a way to bring that together into one coherent project. So in Padres and Formados during this stage, I had received a career development award, and we also, that was kind of allowing us to have a little bit of funding to move the project forward. We wanted a partner who had experience in actually applying parenting strategies, and so we invited in some new partners from the University of Minnesota Extension. And then we applied for another larger pilot grant that really allowed us to bring all of the different partners' expertise, what they brought to the table, into a little bit clearer focus. So as part of that process, we discussed roles, who would be paid, how they would be paid, and some initial collaboration on the budget process. But we hadn't gotten to that point in our partnership where we could really sort of formalize how we were going to work together. So things like MOUs, those sorts of things we hadn't developed yet. And what we would now recommend at this stage is to use a tool, and I believe through IRL you're using a tool that some of us through a different partnership developed, the partnership checklist, to kind of prompt those early discussions. So that tool was really developed out of a recognition for the need to kind of talk through some of those harder issues earlier on in the partnerships. We built a lot of trust and had our kind of core relationship, so we were able to navigate some things. But for new partnerships, I think that that things can go wrong. And even within our pretty established partnership at the preschool stage, we had a couple of bumps in the road. And so the developmental task of the preschool stage is to broaden skills through a common project, cooperate well within the group. And so this was really moving that pilot project forward. And there was a lot of informal synchrony in terms of ideas about how we should operate and work together with a group, though we, again, didn't really talk about this explicitly. And we had a little bit of a miscommunication about this sort of underfunded pilot. We had this number of organizations. Everyone was committed to the project, and everyone was, I think, saw that first trust building, and so was willing to work beyond the hours that they were paid to do, but for the greater good, not of the project, but of the community. And I think that trust building, that we were going to keep the community at the center, is what really allowed us to get over these bumps. And this is really sort of describing what happened. As we were, I'll let you read it and just kind of describe, as we were writing the initial, the grant for the pilot project, a number of us had a conversation that we walked away with different understandings about what a position that we proposed in that pilot grant would be. We were, I mean, it was not a small deal, because it was scarce resources, and it made a difference in terms of how those were going to be used, particularly for Equiparity. And the only thing I can say is that I said this was my making an interpretation out of what you said to me that was incorrect. And I think because we had that trust, we got through it.
And it's the trust and it's the conversation, right? Because I think we both acknowledge, everyone was able to see how it was a misunderstanding. But it was all the processes in place till here that they were not written, right? They were implicit. And as you were talking, I'm thinking, communities they know how to do that. They know how to do this. They know how to be partners and bringing people at the same level. So it's just when the university is doing that, and when you talk about issues and say, I am so sorry, I misunderstood, and we all misunderstood. And I think this understanding was the one that they're talking about, help us move forward. So then we began this new stage, right? And it was the developmental stage. And when we think about a partnership task, is this moment when you increase competence, right? It's kind of like accountability. You know who you are, and now you are assigned a role, and you get prepared for the role, and people around your team expect that from you, right? So for the funding, we prepared for expanded funding. And this was our moment, right, when we were going to this bigger grant to start formalizing things. So we formalized a relationship with Centro, and we began forming this collaborative agreement and wrote an NIH grant in a very collaborative way. The same way that we have been working from the beginning, but now putting that into writing and creating this collaborative agreement, who made us also discuss these things about how are we going to share, right, the data sharing agreement. How are we going to publish this data, and looking into the future about who are we going to become and what are we going to do. And this is an example about sort of like how our collaborative agreement began, and with our project goal, and make it concrete, all those rules that we have been following through the year, and preparing ourselves from the afterlife, right, after project life. How are we going to negotiate those things? And from that, it became, so we started working, we got the NIH grant, we started working in an NIH grant and doing, going from this seed grant and keeping the research going. And it was an amazing thing to see, even at the beginning when we were writing the NIH grant, bringing the lessons learned and the successes from the pilot project. And it was truly magical, and this is far my favorite stage, because what happened is, like, from a research perspective, when we were writing the grant, we were putting there like our outcomes, right? And seeing how much our parents have changed and modified their capacity to create change in their own teams. But also for us, we were seeing at the community level parents getting their activation and loving the work that we were doing to the point like they wanted more. So I'm bringing those things together, and that sense of success and that sense of pride, that was what created and propelled an identity. And today I was thinking, one of the things about identity, one of the components, is self-esteem. So somehow this brought the self-esteem, the group self-esteem about who we were, and make us feel kind of really grounded and really proud. And with that, it came this idea, like, okay, we are so proud who we are. How are we going to call ourselves? And we have this amazing help from a Latina PR consultant, Gabriela, who helped us with the name treatment. And that's when we started navigating kind of like policies and protocols, again, big organizations, and we find out, like, not everything that we dreamt about was able to be completed, right, in the way that we wanted to be done. Like, for example, a conjoint copyright. But we were able to have a name treatment that really identified who we were. And that's how we consolidated our identity through this stage. So some community voices on our team, I think it was very valuable hearing parents talk about their experiences as advisory members. They felt their opinion were respected, and they had been incorporated in the curriculum, right? So this is the other set of parents, not only the parents who we were working with, it was the parents who we have to convince, you guys are the leaders, you are the experts, because at the beginning, that's an issue, right? Our parents were not, they couldn't understand that we were there to learn from them, and to hear them, like they saw everything that they say and advice incorporated in the curriculum was key.
So in the young adulthood stage, the developmental task is to really solidify that bond within a growing partnership. So we received the NIH funding that we had applied for, and at that point then we were figuring out how to include 5 new partners, a school, a clinic, a social service agency, a couple of rural sites. These were different organizations that than we have worked with before, and different levels of experience with research. So and different levels of capacity and desire for collaboration. Some of the organizations really just wanted to have the Padres Informados program in their organization and were much less interested in the research side of it or in participating. So we had to figure out how to navigate that with each organization, which ones to really sort of bring into the core partnerships and which ones to sort of engage along the way. Some of the things that we learned were about that need for constantly, this is the iterative part of it, sort of constantly building trust in the research process. That can never be presumed. It's not static. It's something that has to continue to be ongoing and approached in a thoughtful way. And then we also, as we were rolling out this larger grant, really sort of struggled with the tensions between service delivery and research. And one example in that was, we tried for the researchers from a design perspective to have a delayed control condition, so that within each of our community sites, where we train someone at the community organization to deliver the family program, the families were randomized either into an intervention group or sort of a delayed control condition, and we shortened that period of time to about 6 months. Because even though we knew that was pushing it for follow-up and when we were likely to see effects, because we didn't want families who wanted the program to wait too long. But even that compromise did not quite get us there. We had some families who were, frankly, in crisis and really wanted this program, who we, found out from, friends who were enrolled in the intervention arm that it was happening and who came. And so we had to navigate what to do in those kind of challenging situations. And through that process, we really had to re-engage with that trust building with the organizations, really explain to them why it was important, see what other kind of services we could provide for these families in the short term. And it was a dance that we were doing kind of over and over with each organization that we worked with.
It also signals you like you're doing really work on an unmet need and something like the community needed, right?
So important from that perspective. So the adulthood stage, the partnership task is to produce creative and meaningful work and to share lessons learned with others. So this is about taking the evidence that we generated within our study and bringing it and about our partnership and bringing it to others. And this is the stage where we began to be recognized as experts, both in terms of our partnership longevity and experience and knowledge that we've generated in terms of the topic, the research topic. And during this stage, we began to formally plan for dissemination, discussed that from the beginning, and we've developed out of this a number of dissemination outlets, including a website and some training opportunities for other community organizations who want to use the curriculum we developed.
And maturity, right? And I keep thinking about like we're doing this and you're reading about dissemination and I think it's this, right? Being here and sharing with you all the things that we have done and how we have been thinking about the whole process. So maturity comes when you view the achievement of the partnership with satisfaction, right? When you feel like that you can feel proud because of your contributions, right? And for us, this came at the end and sort of like banking and all those things that we have been collecting through our history and thinking we need to disseminate this. And part of that is like disseminating, again, the program per se, but also disseminating the processes, which is what we're doing today, right? And we built a website because we were having like new, at that moment we have a grant with new members of the community who wanted to implement and deliver the program that we have been doing. So we put together this new website to guide them and to guide us to disseminate the project, right? And we keep thinking about ways of bringing an innovation to different parts of the field, right? And the newest one is to bring this program and to adapt the program into primary care, to deliver the care to the parents where they need it the most, right? When they're there with their children looking for their health. So we have different tools of approaches and thinking about how can we implement this dissemination plan that we are creating and policy solution. And the whole partnership evolved at the same time, right? As in the past, kind of like the challenge was how to bring new members on board. And lately it became like, so how to maintain the old member on board when they're like in different parts of the country, right? So, and it's been fascinating how like going back to the processes and going back to being sitting all together and brainstorming and thinking about kind of like the same principle, how we can recreate who we are with a different context. But knowing like sometimes when you have that trust and communication and that safe space, then you need to keep taking care of it and growing so you can keep developing solutions for your community.
So I think we have a number of lessons learned, but a primary one that kind of got us through the rough spots was really having a shared commitment to community benefit and keeping that at the forefront of our work, and reminding ourselves of that when we had difficult decisions to make.
And then achieving the task, right, of each stage of the development, because that's what we learned, that it was kind of like critical about the next stage. And the other piece is like knowing also to put a name, like kind of like in trauma-sensitive care, right? You are naming the stage, you are naming what you're doing, you are sharing successes, because that's how you care. So we are all here, how you care about that group. It's vital.
And then really thinking about those principles of participatory research, whether they're formally written down or not. I think we would agree that probably formally writing them down even early in partnerships is going to be beneficial for everyone. But when, again, kind of bringing the partnership back to those principles to rethink where are we at, what are we doing now, and are we being true to those shared principles?
The last piece, I don't think it's the last, but that's one of the biggest ones, right? Conflict can propel growth. And for us, it was kind of like easy, but also like it was part of being tuned up about the same messages that we're sending to our parents, because we were talking to our parents about like conflict is good, and you need to tackle conflict, and you need to know how to resolve conflict, right? So at some moment we look around and say, remember? So, and it was absolutely fabulous. Like you talk about the obstacles and the challenges and brainstorm about and hear and listening, kind of like really listening, active listening to the other. And maybe it was a little better or easier for us because it was just putting up, almost like following the same receipt that we were giving to the parents for us. But it's a very important piece to conquer.
So we have some homework for you. Prior to our conversation, we would like, within your partnership, you to identify which stage you believe your partnership is in, and to discuss the questions that you see here with your research partner. So do each of you feel like you're at the same stage, or are you identifying different stages and why? And did you yourself, within your partnerships, did you use tools at each stage, and did they work for you? And what challenges do you anticipate, given your partnership, your community that you're working with, and your research study? What do you anticipate might be future challenges as you move through these developmental stages? And are there any other lessons learned?
And we also want to discuss any conflict that you have had, right? Were they the same at each stage, or were they different, right? What were there were some negative outcomes for you around the conflict. Did you have some positive outcomes of the conflict? And don't be afraid of talking about conflict. I think one of the things that I remember happening to us when we were invited in Chicago to talk about the partnership, we were highlighting the conflict. We were highlighting the negative pieces because no one talks about that. And because everyone, it's kind of like parenting, right? It's creating this myth like happy, perfect parenting doesn't exist. And you need to talk and share your struggles through that. The same with partnership. So bring it on. We're going to coach you and we are going to learn from you. So thank you so very much for being here, and we hope to join you live from Minneapolis.
Thank you.
Thank you.